guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through my March book haul. Not gonna lie, I have picked up quite a few books I'm so thrilled to be chatting about today, many of which I have just been influenced by various internet platforms to pick up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Of course, starting with the 5 selects from Book of the Month for the month of March, who I am also partnering with for this video. If you guys are new here or just not familiar with Book of the Month, they are an online bookish subscription service. Every single month they curate a selection of 5 titles from a variety of different genres, voices, authors across the bookish world. They're always new releases, they're always hardcover, and you can select one book for $14.99 and up to 2 additional titles for $9.99 each and have them sent directly to your door. It's super convenient and incredibly handy. It's very easy to skip if you're not interested in any of the titles for that month, and there's also a huge backlog of books that you're able to peruse and pick from, so there's always something there to catch your eye, in my opinion. Per usual, I of course have an offer code for you guys. If you use the code BOOKBUD, you can actually get your first book for $9.99 instead of $14.99. I'll have a link to that as well as the code linked down in the description, but let's go ahead and dive into their titles because so many of them sound amazing. The first one is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This might be the one I am most excited about. It's definitely tied with another one. This is a story that I believe has like 2 different timelines that kind of intersect and collide. The first perspective we follow is Nella, who lives in 18th century London, and she essentially runs this dark apothecary that produces and sells poisons to women who may need them for various reasons. Nella's world, though, is turned upside down when a young girl stumbles upon this apothecary and their bond begins to grow. Jump forward to present day, we also follow Caroline, who is an aspiring historian who stumbles upon an old apothecary bottle that points to the existence of this lost apothecary. And then from there, I believe these 2 storylines and histories begin to kind of collide. This sounds really cool. I love the setting. I love this idea of this lost apothecary and poison. I'm hoping this has a great atmosphere and a lot of historical tie-ins and references. I don't know, this just sounds like a book that could really be right up my alley. From there, the next selection is In a Book Club, Far Away by Tiff Marcello, and this is definitely a story about women and friendship kind of coming back together. This essentially follows 3 different army wives who were once really close and even had a book club. They've since become estranged from one another after a dramatic occurrence. However, when one member kind of has a situation kind of arise in her life, it kind of begins to bring the 3 women back together. As these 3 women reunite, they must overcome past hurts to see if there's any future for their friendship. This just sounds like a really charming, emotional read, centering books, but also 3 distinct and different women through time and kind of how relationships can ebb and flow depending on certain situations. So this sounds like this might bring a tear to my eye, but also a smile to my face. The next book you're able to select from sounds very good, and that is What's Mine and Yours by Naima Coster. This is a legacy-based family story, essentially documenting the collision of 2 families and their relationship through 20 years of time. This is said to be a sweeping tale of legacy, identity, and the American family, and how race can affect even the most intimate of relationships. This book essentially opens in a small North Carolina town during the integration of 2 local high schools. With this, we follow 2 students, Guy and Noelle. They themselves collide with each other, but also their families, creating a long, messy bond that impacts not only these 2 students for the rest of their lives, but also their families. And it is said these messy ties will shape the trajectory of their adult lives and their mothers, each determined to see their child inherit a better life, will make choices that will haunt them for decades to come. The book personally really calls out to me as it's a family-centered story, which is generally something I personally really enjoy. I also am really intrigued by the fact that this is a book that takes place over 20 years and across a lot of different locations, places, and we follow these characters through a huge portion of their life. This is definitely one that I hope to read soon. The next book I would say is definitely tied for the one that I am most excited about. This just sounds like it's going to be incredible and definitely a page turner, and that is The Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Dwani Walton. This is a story that centers the music industry and is written actually in an interview style. But essentially this follows our main character Opal, who in the 1970s made a really big name for herself as a punk artist. Growing up in Detroit, Opal never really saw herself settling for a normal job, kind of living out a normal life. She always wanted to create and kind of leave her stamp on the world. And even though being a Black artist in the punk scene was definitely unusual, she was determined to make a name for herself. And she's discovered by Nev, who is a singer-songwriter. They decide to link up and create rock music together. Fast forward a bit to New York York City, and when Opal's beginning to make a name for herself, there's a conflict between her and another band signed on her label, and Opal's bold protest against them sets off a chain of events that kind of changes the direction of her life forever. Fast forward again to 2016, Opal and Nev are considering a reunion tour, and a journalist decides to get an oral history of both her life and the events that happened in the 1970s, which kind of points to the structure of this book being in interview style. But as the interview begins to progress, there are new allegations from the events that happened in the 70s that begin to arise, and it just sounds like an incredibly interesting story. The time period, the music setting, and also how it's written in interview style. I think this is one I'm going to listen to on audiobook, as I want to make sure I capture the interview quality of this, and I feel like audio does a really great job of that. This is one that has definitely caught my eye, and I'm very excited to read it. The last book you're able to select for this month is a classic psychological thriller, and that is Too Good to Be True by Carola Lovering. This sounds like a wild ride. It essentially follows Skye, who is thrilled after a whirlwind romance. She is about to get married to what she thinks is the guy of her dreams. He's older and more mature than any guy she's ever met in her entire life. She's thrilled. Unfortunately, her husband is harboring all sorts of secrets. Not only is he already married, but he seems to be marrying Skye for his own deceptive ends. I think we jump back and forth between his perspective as well as Skye, as well as an unknown third perspective set 30 years in the past, who's also associated with this man. This sounds like it's very dramatic, but also quite the page turner. One love story, two marriages, three versions of the truth. Oh no. Alrighty guys, those are the 5 books you're able to select from Book of the Month this month. Again, I'll have a link as well as a coupon code down below, but let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the books I have picked up recently. First is definitely a book I have just fallen to the hype. I've seen this on BookTube, I've seen this on BookTok, I've seen Monica tell me she cried to it and made a Spotify playlist about it, so I bought it. And that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is the book that has been popular and very shiny for ages. Like, I've heard only exceptional things about this story, and it's one that I've been wanting to read for a long time and just for some reason haven't picked it up. I've actually read a lot of Greek classics in school, so I always love kind of a reinterpretation of these really well-known tales, and that is definitely what I believe this follows. It kind of hones in on the stories of Achilles and his tragic storyline, a story of him going off to war. I think he's torn between love and fate and destiny. I've heard this is beautiful and emotional. I'm excited to see how this story plays out, and I hear the romance in this is just will live in your heart forever. Next book I also picked up because I've just seen it everywhere, and that is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is a multi-perspective story following 4 different women in contemporary Seoul, South Korea. All of them are trying to make their way in a world that is defined by impossible standards of beauty. All of them kind of have their own struggles, their own desires, their own obsessions, and ultimately I think it's them coming together and their friendship and the solace that they find together that saves them. I've heard nothing but incredible things about this particular debut and kind of how it touches on this sort of universal experience while also being very intimate and specific to each of these women's lives and experiences. So this is one I was thrilled to add to my shelf. I keep saying this with every book. I can't wait to read it soon, but yeah, I do feel that way with this as well. So good luck to my TBR. Speaking of hyped books, they keep coming, and I have The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold. This is a story I personally don't want to know too much about going in, as I feel like part of its charm and part of why people have been loving it is that it kind of is supposed to boggle your mind. I do know that it is relatively topical, as I think it kind of opens on a pandemic has swept across the entire globe. We follow a young woman who is on a personal quest with her dog, trying to find a portal, like a famous portal that could possibly save her. I'm not quite sure. Again, I'm trying to keep my own knowledge of the synopsis as vague as possible because I kind of want to go into this blind. It sounds unusual, but very human. I also personally love these end-of-the-world narratives where beauty still tries to persist. Again, I've heard excellent things. This is one that I feel like I might really enjoy, so I fell to the hype and I bought it. The next book I have to show off, I feel like in my heart of hearts, I am just going to love. Like, I have a feeling this is going to be a new favorite, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is the first book to a new middle grade fantasy series. And wow, just like the early reviews have got me hyped. This follows our main character Amari, who has never given up the hope that her brother Quentin is still alive, not even when the police have told her otherwise. So when she discovers a ticking briefcase in his closet holding an invitation for him for the Bureau of Secret Affairs, she decides that this is the key to finding her missing brother. So she accepts this invitation on her behalf, and she's quickly swept away to a competition to basically earn a spot within the Bureau, thrown headfirst into a world of magic, fairies, aliens. She essentially has to compete for a spot amongst children who have been training their entire lives. This, I've heard, is amazing. Not only the writing, the imaginative quality, obviously it has a trial element, which tends to be something I love within middle grade. I just hear this is a fantastic first book to a new series, and I just can't wait to pick this up. I feel like this is going to be next level, amazing, magical, everything you want. Next book I have to show off was one of my most anticipated books of the year and was a pre-order for me, and that is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. Ever since I read the synopsis of this last year, I have been counting down the days. This just sounds like an excellent start to a new YA fantasy story. It sounds dark, it sounds gripping, and I cannot wait. This follows our main character Decca, who lives in fear and anticipation for her village's upcoming blood ceremony that essentially allows you to become a full-fledged citizen, already considered unusual from everyone else in town due to her intuition. She prays that her blood just runs red, so she can finally be considered normal. However, during the ceremony, her blood runs gold, which is essentially worse than a death sentence. However, shortly after the ceremony, a mysterious woman arrives and essentially provides our main character with a choice: stay in her village and confront her fate, or come with her and basically begin her training as a magical, powerful warrior who uses magic. Personally, one of my favorite tropes to find in YA fantasy is this touched by the god magical power situation, not to mention that combined with a found family component of people come together due to this unusual power. I love it. Thrilled to finally have this in my hands and on my shelf. Definitely one of my most anticipated books of the year. Next is a weird historical fantasy book that honestly, just like the synopsis immediately pulled me in, and that is The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Kornichek. Essentially, I read the beginning part of this synopsis and immediately bought this book. No questions asked, no additional reading or looking into the story. It essentially reads as follows. When a banished witch falls in love with the legendary trickster Loki, she risks the wrath of the gods in this moving, subversive debut novel that reimagines Norse mythology. A dark, witchy reimagining of Norse mythology with likely a beautiful lyrical writing style. Truly, say no more. I'm gonna be reading this. This is one of those books I want to read right away, but also I feel like could benefit from a cold, wintry fall backdrop. So that is the only aspect of the story I am torn about. Really, when should I read this book? It just sounds like everything I love. The next book I have to show off is one that is getting a lot of buzz for a lot of obvious reasons, and that is Clara and the Sun by Kazu Ishiguro. I've actually never read a Kazu Ishiguro book. I own a few, The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go, and I'm embarrassed that I have not read either of them. That being said, his newest release sounds very, very interesting and actually might be the one I start with just based on the synopsis, which is very vague, but is said to kind of be exploring the wondrous and mysterious nature of the human heart. This essentially follows our main character Clara, who is an artificial friend, and from her place in the store, she has been carefully observing all the customers who have come in and out. She dreams of finally being selected by a human and taken home. When that possibility finally emerges, her circumstances may change forever. In Clara and the Sun, Kazu Ishiguro looks at our rapidly changing modern world through the eyes of an unforgettable narrator to explore the fundamental question: what does it mean to love? This just sounds really, really interesting. I'm kind of getting her vibes, but I am not sure, but I am definitely intrigued. This is also a book I feel like the whole world is going to be reading, and that also kind of intrigues me. So yeah, this is one I'm really excited to have, and hopefully I can finally say I've read a Kazu Ishiguro book in the year 2021, because that definitely needs to happen. And then the last book I'm just gonna quickly show off, and that is Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. I have a beautiful finished copy of this to have live on my shelf. This is one of my most anticipated YA releases of the year, and I definitely plan on reading it very, very soon. This is the second book to the Last Hours trilogy, which is a new Shadowhunter installment, and it's just so good. Set during the turn of the century, it has all the propriety and society expectations mixed with demons and Shadowhunter shenanigans. It has angst and romance and multiple POVs of characters you can't help but fall in love with. It has all of the charm that Cassandra Clare brings to her YA stories, and I don't know, this honestly might be a new favorite of mine. I just can't stop thinking about it, and I cannot wait to pick it up. The first one ended so dramatically. It was so much fun. But yeah, Chain of Iron, have the finished copy now. It's beautiful. Classic Shadowhunter hardback, what can I say? Alrighty guys, that is my March book haul. Let me know down below some books you've gotten recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!